Hello everyone, welcome. Look, the ocean's over there and we're going to continue reading, got my London shirt on. We're going to continue reading Sir Gibbie by George MacDonald. He was C.S. Lewis's mentor, spiritual mentor, and influenced G.K. Chesterton as well, and Madeleine L'Engle, to name a few authors who really loved him. And so let's get started. I have it all set up. Just join us, whatever video you're on. I always say just trust that you're here for a reason. You know, you don't know what's going to be in this part of the video. So welcome. All right. We are on a chapter called Sunday at Home. Now, there's some Scottish words in this. We're on chapter 6. And I'll do my best with the Scottish words. I looked ahead last time, and I think I'm still there. So when you're reading it by yourself, you're just like, what are these words? So there is a guy that translated these in normal English for us. He speaks Scottish. Anyway, so let's begin. This is from the 1800s. If you let it, it can just transform your life. Leia is here too. My dog is named Leia. She's right there watching for us. Leia, good girl. She's whining because she wants to go in the woods. All right. So let's get the canyon view today. All right. It's kind of cloudy, but you can see that. I don't even know where the sun is. All right, let's get started, like I said. Anyway. All right. I'm going to get behind it for a second. Talk over here. Eating a real dinner in his father's house, though without a table to set it upon, Gibbie felt himself a most privileged person. The only thing that troubled him was that his father ate so little. Not until the twilight began to show did Sir George, that's his father, really began to revive. He came home inebriated, I'll just say it like that, from whiskey. That's his vice. Anyway, so did he really begin to revive? But the darker it grew without, the brighter his spirit burned. For amongst not a few others, there was this strange remnant of righteousness in the man, that he never would taste drink before it was dark in winter, or in summer before the regular hour for ceasing work had arrived. And to this rule he kept, and that under far greater difficulties, on the Sunday as well, for Mistress Croll would not sell a drop of drink, not even on the sly on the Sabbath day. She would fain have some stake in the hidden kingdom, and George, who had not a Sunday stomach he could assume for the day any more than a Sunday coat, was thereby driven to provide his whiskey, and that day drink it at home. When, with the bottle so near him, and the sense that he had not to go out to find his relief, his resolution was indeed sorely tried, but he felt that to yield would be to cut his last cable and be swept on the lee shore of utter ruin. You know, he still would go to work and earn his money to buy the whiskey himself. I love when I would come up here, and I would come at sunset when I had a different schedule with my kids, and it was just beautiful because we could see the sun setting in the background. Oh well, let's see. All right. breathless with eager interest. Just a second, I'm just taking a pause to be present. You know, sometimes we just rush right into doing. Oh, there's a bird right there in that bush. Look, I'll show you. See if you can see it moving. Singing. There, did you see it? It might be too far away for the camera. Take me to a rock that's higher than I think it's Psalm 61 I was meditating on. Oh, yes. Let me be under the shelter of your wing is in that as well. It's like Psalms 91. All right. Breathless with eager interest, Gibbie watched his father's hands, and just as the darkness closed in, the boot was finished. His father rose, and Gibbie, glowing with delight, sprang upon the seat he had left, while his father knelt upon the floor to try upon the unaccustomed foot the result from which he had just drawn the last. Ah, pity, pity. But even Gibbie might by this time have learned to foresee it. 3 times already had the same thing happened. The boot would not go on the foot. The real cause of the failure, it were useless to inquire. Sir Gibbie said that, Sunday being the only day he could give to the boots before he could finish them, Gibbie's feet had always outgrown the measure. But it may be Sir George was not so good a maker as cobbler. That he meant honestly by the boy, I am sure, and not the less sure for the confession I am forced to make, that on each occasion when he thus failed to fit him, he sold the boots the next day at a fair price to a ready-made shop and drank the proceeds. A stranger thing still was that although Gibbie had never yet worn boot or shoe, his father's conscience was greatly relieved by the knowledge that he spent his Sundays in making boots for him, for his son. Right, but none of them ever fit him by the time he finished. He had outgrown them, so he never had shoes. This kid that runs all around the streets in the city and finds things for people, and he's mute. Anyway. Welcome here. Welcome all the new people. There's lots of new people lately. Thank you. Welcome. I'm glad you're here. This book, you know, in Psalm 23, it says he restores my soul. Well, he restores it through this book. That's one of the ways, for sure. He will restore your soul. I know if you ask God to and surrender to it, it's all spoken through George MacDonald. But sometimes there are, you know, eyes that see but don't see, and ears that hear but don't hear. So I can't. But I just trust God. Please take the scales off of the eyes of every single person that comes this way to this book, this reading of it. Pray you bless their lives, bless their understanding, help them see how important these kinds of books are for their soul, for the people that are called to it, Lord. You call us each on different paths. We pray in Jesus' name, amen. All right, now I welcome all faiths. This is just my faith that I pray in. But I welcome you, whoever you are. It can restore your soul as well. Like, all truth is God's truth, and God is generous with the giving of his spirit and his truth and his love. You know, Jesus said, a bruised reed he will not break. Well, it's said about him, you know, a flickering candle he won't snuff out. So any inclination we have towards love, he'll help grow that if you let the Creator, divine love. All right, anyway, I love it when it's sunny. It's so weird when it's not, but maybe it's for a purpose today. I just felt a raindrop, I think. We'll see. I have a sweatshirt if I need to cover us. Just like him covering us with his wings. All right. A stranger thing still was that although Gibbie had never yet worn boot or shoe, his father's conscience was greatly relieved by the knowledge that he spent his Sundays in making boots for him. Had he been an ordinary child and given him trouble, he would possibly have hated him. As it was, he had a great, though sadly inoperative affection for the boy, which was an endless good to them both. Hold on, I gotta wipe my nose. When I get tears in my eyes, my nose starts running, obviously. Had a good cry this morning. God never promised us to have an easy life. What is that? I was praying earnestly for God when I was a kid, and I was at one of my friends' houses. And I looked up on their refrigerator or something, or the side, or in a picture frame, it says, don't pray for an easy life. Pray to be stronger, or something like that. So God, give us more faith and trust that you are the shelter we seek. Maybe the sun will come out. It looks like it is over the ocean. All right, we'll see. After many bootless trials, bootless the feet must remain. And George, laying the failure down in despair, rose from his knees and left Gibbie seated on the chest, more like a king discrowned than a beggar unshod. And like a king, the little beggar bore his pain. He heaved one sigh, and a slow moisture gathered in his eyes. But it did not overflow. 1 minute only he sat and hugged his desolation, then, missing his father, jumped off the box to find him. Wow, just like us just now. You know, one drop of our desolation, then we go look for our father. Anyway, he sat on the edge of the bed, looking infinitely more disconsolate than Gibbie felt, his head and hands hanging down, a picture of utter dejection. Gibbie bounded to him, climbed on the bed, and nearly strangled him in the sharp embrace of his little arms. Sir George took him on his knees and kissed him, and the tears rose in his dull eyes. He got up with him, carried him to the box, placed him on it once more, and fetched a piece of brown paper from under the bed. From this he tore carefully several slips, with which he then proceeded to take a most thoughtful measurement of the baffling foot. He was far more to be pitied than Gibbie, who would not have worn the boots an hour had they been the best fit in shoedom. He wasn't used to wearing shoes, so forget it, you know. I can't go for that. No can do I. I was just singing that song yesterday. The soles of his feet were very nearly equal in the resistance to leather, and at the least until the snow and hard frost came, he was better without boots. But now the darkness had fallen, and his joy was at the door. But he was always too much ashamed to begin to drink before the child. He hated to uncork the bottle before him. What follows was in regular Sunday routine. "Galleon over to Mistress Crawl's, Gibbie," he said, "with my compliments." Right? Go get our Sunday dinner. I think they go get it now. Because he didn't want... Anyway. Away ran Gibbie, nothing loath, and at his knock was admitted. Mistress Crawl sat in the parlour, taking her tea and expecting him. She was always kind to the child. She could not help feeling that no small part of what ought to be spent on him came to her, because she owned the liquor house, the whiskey house. And so now she's reflecting that some of what ought to have gone to him is going to her, you know. But anyway, therefore, partly for his sake, partly for her own, she always gave him tea, nominally tea, really blue city milk, with as much dry bread as he could eat, and a bit of buttered toast from her plate to finish off with. As he ate, he stood at the other side of the table. He looked so miserable in her eyes that even before her servant, she was ashamed to have him sit with her. But Gibbie was quite content, never thought of sitting, and ate in gladness, every now and then looking up with loving, grateful eyes, which must have gone right to the woman's heart, had it not been for a vague sense she had of being all the time his enemy. And that, although she spent much time in persuading herself that she did her best both for his father and him, when he returned greatly refreshed and the boots all but forgotten, he found his father, as he knew he would, already started on the business of the evening. He had drawn the chest, the only seat in the house, to the side of the bed against which he leaned his back. A penny candle was burning in a stone blacking bottle. On the chimney piece and on the floor beside the chest stood the bottle of whiskey, a jug of water, a stoneware mug, and a wine glass. There was no fire and no kettle, whence his drinking was sad, as became the Scotch Sabbath in distinction from the Jewish. I don't know if they are the ones that came up with the toddy. I'm not sure. That's what he would normally drink at a hot whiskey drink at. Anyway, I don't want to talk too much about it in case some of you are sober, you know. There was no fire. Okay, so there, however, was the drink, and thereby his soul could live. Yea, expand her moldy wings. Wow. Because, you know, we've already talked about, if you haven't seen the other chapters before this, that, you know, when we go to our addictions, they become like an idol. They become a god for us, and we start worshiping those instead of the true God. And God is love, so he's always leading us to more freedom, real freedom, and love, and real humility. Oh, here comes someone walking. Hello.
Hello.
Leia. It's pointing towards me. I'm reading a book. Enjoy. Thank you. Leia. That was such a cute doggy. Oh, so cute. All right. There, however, was the drink, and thereby his soul could live, yea, expand her moldy wings. Gibbie was far from shocked. It was all right, all in the order of things. He didn't know more. He didn't know his father could be without drink, you know. And he went up to his father with radiant countenance. Sir George put forth his hands and took him between his knees. An evil wind now swelled his sails, but the cargo of the crazy human hull was not therefore evil. Wow. Gibbie, he said solemnly, never ye drink a drop of whiskey. Never ye drink a drop. He says like that, a whiskey. Never ye racks on the hand to the bottle. Reach out your hand to the bottle. Never ye drink anything but water, cold water, my man. And he said the word. As he said the words, he stretched out his own hand to the mug, lifted it up to his lips, and swallowed a great gulp. Don't do it, I tell you, Gibbie, he repeated. Gibbie shook his head with positive repudiation. That's right, my man, responded his father with satisfaction. Given ever I see you put a taste to the bottle, I'll wrestle free from my grave and flog you out. This something what's if you have, my man. Anyway, here it is if you want to read it and understand what's being said. But he's basically saying, don't ever do that. I'll come out of my grave and wallop you, you know. Not that he's ever done that, right? Here followed another gulp from the mug. The threat had conveyed nothing to Gibbie. Even had he understood it, it would have carried nothing but terror to his. It wouldn't have carried anything but terror to his father-worshipping heart. He loved his father so much. Gibbie, resumed Sir George after a brief pause, do you know what folk call you when I'm dead? Gibbie again shook his head, with expression this time of mere ignorance. They'll call ye Sir Gibbie Galbraith, my man, said his father, and rightly, for it'll be no nickname, though some may launch cause ye further, was a suitor and at the more for that. Don't you fret yourself, poor fellow, heeding what they say, Gibbie. Yes, you're Sir Gibbie, and has the honour of the family to hand up, my man, that ye cannot do a drink. This cursed drink been the ruin of the Galbraiths as far back as I know. Well, mayest the only thing I can remember of my grandfather, big honey man with long white hair. 'Twas big, me Gibbie, is seen him die drunk in the gutter. Oh, the pump. He drank most of the thing there was, Gibbie. Lands and lordship, till there was hardly any acre left upon the hill and doorside to come to my father. Wow. He drank away the inheritance that was supposed to go to Sir George and Sir Gibbie. Here's the Scotch again if you want to read it. Wow. Most of the thing there was, until there was hardly any acre left upon the hill and doorside, come to my father. Nothing but what seems houses, and he was a good man, my father, but his father learnt him to drink afore he was most out of coaties, I don't know, when he was young, I guess, and in schooling, before again he read himself. Anyway, Gibbie, what was to come of me? I put it to you, Gibbie, what was to come of me? Gonna king, what it, I didn't know neither what it was to drink, and so had this fallow feeling. If I can look it up afterwards, I'll put some of the words. This is page 33, of course. Wow, that's the age of Jesus when he was crucified, right? And so anyway, no, they ain't the best of company, laddie, but while they're no ill, he concluded with a weak smile, as some reflex of himself not quite unsatisfactory gloomed faintly in the besmeared mirror of his uncertain consciousness. All right. And so he's telling him not to, and he's telling them what happened to their past because of it. If I do that, then it's brighter, but you can't see the clouds. And it's gonna look strange maybe. All right, there's a little bit of clouds. Oh well. Okay, so Gibbie obeyed, and getting under the Gordon tartan, lay and looked out like a weasel from its hole at his father's back. For half an hour or so, Sir George went on drinking. All at once he started to his feet, and turning towards the bed, a white face distorted with agony, kneeled down on the box and groaned out, "Oh God, the pains of hell have gotten hold upon me. Oh Lord, I'm in the grip of Satan. The devil's a drink has me by the house. I don't know what that is. The throat, maybe. I doubt, oh Lord, you're going to damn me dreadful. What good will that do you, oh Lord? I don't know, but I doubt, and you'll do. It's like he's not doubting. You'll do what's right. Only I had never crossed ye in your will. If only I had never crossed you, I know what I'm to do, or what's to be done with me, or where my help's going to come from. I have tried and tried to master the drink, but I was humbled, WHUMLED, and this is like they call it like a generational curse. It's in the Bible. It's like when it keeps going down from one generation to another. But you can be a generational curse breaker. You break these, and this book can help us. All right. All right. I had tried and tried to master the drink, but I was humbled. For ye see, Lord, knowing a thing as you do, as until I have a drop in my skin, I cannot even think. I cannot I can't mind the songs I used to sing, right? The hymns and stuff. Or the prayers my mother learnt me sitting upon her lap, till I swallowed a mouthful or twa. Things looked awful, and I'm fit to cut my throat, and saying ance I begun, since there's no mere thought, endeavouring to behold, or withhold, it says withhold, till I cannot drink a drop. So, alcohol is a depressant. It can depress you. And so he's so depressed, he's saying he needs it, but he doesn't know what it's like to not go without, Oh God, what good you make things, and why'd you make whiskey when you knew it would make me sick, a beast of me? Oh. He paused, stretched down his hand to the floor, lifted the mug, and drank a huge mouthful, then with a cough that sounded apologetic, set it down and recommenced. Oh Lord, I doubt there's near help for me, for the very river of the water of life wouldn't be guide to me wanting a drop free. wouldn't, like, he's just thinking that he's still damned when you can at any time confess. You know, if you have a chance before you die, and you can pray for souls that they will have a chance. I pray for souls I don't know their last minute. I pray for souls because God is above time sometimes, you know, that they'll have a chance to repent and just and see. Sometimes in that extreme you see, but anyway, the river of life's not enough for the bottle until it's with it anyway. It's no more, no, we're drunkards, Lord, and now. It's now that, Lord, it's only that we cannot do wanton the drink. I must confess, but no drunkards, Lord. I am no drunk, I know what I'm saying, and it's it's fair truth. But I could have had prayed a word to you, Lordship, had I had a joggy or two first. I don't know what that is. Oh Lord, deliver me from the power of Satan. Oh Lord, I cannot help myself. Don't see me in the ill place. Don't send me. It says, do not send me to the ill place. Ye loot the Dale's gang until the swine let me. Oh, yeah. Turn these devils into the swine. Don't let them be in me anymore. He's asking for God's mercy. Thank God. With this frightful petition, his utterance began to grow indistinct. Then he fell forward upon the bed, groaning, and his voice died gradually away. Gibbie had listened to all he said, but the awe of hearing his father talk to one unseen made his soul very still, and when he ceased, he fell asleep. Alas for the human soul inhabiting a drink-fouled brain. It is a human soul still, and wretched in the midst of all that whiskey can do for it. Hi, sorry. Sorry. All right, and wretched for, okay, so, and with the, here, let's see. So very still. Okay, so there is a human soul still, and wretched in the midst of all that whiskey can do for it. From the pit of hell it cries out, so long as there is that which can sin, it is a man. And the prayer of misery carries its own justification. When the sober petitions of the self-righteous and the unkind are rejected, you know, when someone is aware, I have not done right, I have not acted in love towards myself or towards my son, towards the way you created me. He said, you know, those realizations come to Jesus. Jesus showed us this in a parable. Come to God more readily than some self-righteous person, and the unkind there are rejected, because Jesus said, which one went home justified when the man said, forgive me, have mercy on me, and he couldn't even lift his head up to heaven, versus the self-righteous person who was looking at him and go, thank you, God, that I fast once a week and I tithe and I'm not like this sinner over there. You know, he didn't even ask. He didn't see the need to ask for forgiveness anyway. So there we have no one to judge. He who forgives not is not forgiven, and the prayer of the Pharisee is as the weary beating of the surf of hell, while the cry of a soul out of its fire sends the strings of love trembling. That's beautiful. He who forgives not is not forgiven, and the prayer of the Pharisee is as the weary beating of the surf of hell, while the cry of the soul out of its fire sets the heartstrings of love trembling. There are sins which men must leave behind, and sins which they must carry with them. Society scouts the drunkard because he is loathsome, and it matters nothing whether society be right or wrong, while it cherishes in its very bosom vices which are, to the God-born thing we call the soul, yet worse poisons. Drunkards and sinners, hard as it may be. Hi! Leia, shh. Drunkards and sinners. So when people walk by this. Hard as it may be for them to enter into the kingdom of heaven, must yet be easier to save than the man whose position, reputation, money engross his heart and his care, who seeks the praise of men and not the praise of God. When I am more of a Christian, I shall have learnt to be sorrier for the man whose end is money or social standing than for the drunkard. But now my heart, recoiling from the one, is sore for the other, for the agony, the helplessness, the degradation, the nightmare, struggle, the wrongs and cruelties committed, the duties neglected, the sickening ruin of mind and heart. So often, too, the drunkard is originally a style of man immeasurably nobler than the moneymaker. Wow. Compare a Coleridge, Samuel Taylor, or Hartley with that man has not yet passed to his account. God has him in his universe furnaces for the refining of gold, as well as for the burning of chaff and tares and fruitless branches. And however they may have offended, it is the elder brother who is the judge of all the younger ones. The elder brother, Jesus, right? Oof. Oh, I see why. Okay. I was getting an intuition before this to do the video a different way, and I just thought, oh, that I don't need to do that. But now I see why, because it's distracting me. I don't want anything to distract us. I'll just leave it. Okay. Gibbie slept some time. When he woke, it was pitch dark, and he was not lying on his father's bosom, on his heart, right? That was his favorite place. He felt about with his hands till he found his father's head. Then he got up and tried to rouse him, and failing to get him onto the bed, but in that, too, he was sadly unsuccessful. What with the darkness and the weight of him, the result of the boy's best endeavour was that Sir George half slipped, half rolled down upon the box, and from that to the floor. Assured then of his own helplessness, wee Gibbie dragged the miserable bolster from the bed and got it under his father's head, then covered him with the plaid. The one blanket they had was their family crest or something, and creeping under it, laid himself on his father's bosom, where soon he slept again. He woke very cold, and getting up, turned heels over head several times to warm himself, but quietly, for his father was still asleep. The room was no longer dark, for the moon was shining through the skylight. When he had got himself a little warmer, he turned to have a look at his father. The pale light shone full upon his face, and it was that, Gibbie thought, which made him look so strange. He darted to him and stared aghast. He had never seen him look like that before, even when most drunk. He threw himself upon him. His face was dreadfully cold. He pulled and shook him in fear. He could not have told of what, but he would not wake. He was gone to see what God could do for him there, for whom nothing more could be done here. Wow. But Gibbie did not know anything about death, and went on trying to wake him. At last he observed that although his mouth was wide open, his breath did not come from it. Thereupon his heart began to fail him. But when he lifted an eyelid and saw what was under it, the house rang with the despairing shriek of the little orphan. Wow. So now he's an orphan. His mother was dead long before, a little after he was born, it said. Chapter 7, The Town Sparrow. This too will pass is a Persian word. I should like it better if it were, this too shall pass. Gibbie's agony passed, for God is not the God of the dead, but of the living. Through the immortal essence in him, life became again life, and he ran about the streets as before. Some may think that we, Sir Gibbie, as many now called him, some knowing the truth, and others in kindly mockery, would get on all the better for the loss of such a father, but it was not so. In his father he had lost his paradise, and was now a creature expelled. Whoa, I look all yellow, hold on. All right. He was not so much to be pitied as many a child dismissed by sudden decree from a home to a school. But the streets and the people and the shops, the horses and the dogs, even the penny loaves, though he was hungry, had lost half their precious delight when his father was no longer in the accessible background, the heart of the blissful city. As to food and clothing, he did neither much better nor any worse than before. People were kind as usual, and kindness was to Gibbie the very milk of Mother Nature, whose the hand that proffered it, or what form it took, he cared no more than a stray kitten cares whether the milk set down to it be in a blue saucer or a white, but he always made them the right return. The first thing a kindness deserves is acceptance. The next is transmission. Gibbie gave both, without thinking much about either, for he never had taken, and indeed never learned to take, a thought about what he should eat, or what he should drink, or wherewithal he should be clothed, a fault rendering him, in the eyes of the economist of this world, utterly unworthy of a place in it. Wow. I was just reading that passage. I think it's in Matthew when Jesus said, don't worry about your clothes. Look at the lilies of the field. Like God clothes them better than King Solomon. And these are like cut up and be burnt away at the end of the day sometimes, grass comes and goes. And you're of worth far more than that. So don't worry about what you eat or drink. That's the verse that he's, anyway. Positively or negatively then, okay, I'm getting cold. Everybody was good to him, and Gibbie felt it. But what could make up for the loss of his paradise, the bosom of his father? Drunken father as he was, I know of nothing that can or ought to make up for such a loss, except that which can restore it, the bosom of the Father of fathers. Look, capital F. Right here. The Father of fathers. He roamed the streets as all his life before. The whole of the day and part of the night he took what was given him and picked up what he found. There were some who would gladly have brought him within the bounds of an ordered life. He soon drove them to despair, however, for the streets had been his nursery, and nothing could keep him out of them. But the sparrow and the rook are just as respectable in reality, though not in the eyes of the henwife, as the egg-laying fowl or the dirt-gobbling duck. And however Gibbie's habits might shock the ladies of Mr. Sclater's congregation who sought to civilize him, the boy was no more about mischief in the streets at midnight than they were in their beds. Right? They collected enough for his behoof to board him for a year with an old woman who kept a school. And they did get him to sleep one night in her house, but in the morning, when she would not let him run out, brought him into the schoolroom, her kitchen, and began to teach him to write. Gibbie failed to see the good of it. He must have space, change, adventure, air, or life was not worth the name to him. Above all, he must see friendly faces, and that of the old dame was not such. But he desired to be friendly with her, and once, as she leaned over him, put up his hand, not a very clean one, I am bound to give her the advantage of my confessing, to stroke her cheek, right? He just wanted to touch her. He couldn't speak, right? She pushed him roughly away, rose in indignation upon her crutch, and lifted her cane to chastise him for the insult. A class of urchins, to Gibbie's eyes at least, looking unhappy, were at the moment blundering through the 23rd Psalm. Oh. Ever after, even when now, Sir Gilbert more than understood the great song, the words, thy rod and thy staff, like the spell of a necromancer, would still call up the figure of the dame, irate, in her horn spectacles and her black ribbon caped, leaning with one arm on her crutch, and while the other uplifting what was with her no mere symbol of authority. Like a shell from a mortar, he departed from the house, right? He took off. She hobbled to the door after him, but his diminutive figure, many yards away, his little bare legs misty with the swiftness as he ran, was the last she ever saw of him, and her pupils had a bad time of it the rest of the day. He never even entered the street again in which she lived, Thus, after one night's brief interval of respectability, he was again a rover of the city, a flitting insect that lighted here and there and spread wings of departure the moment a fresh desire awoke. It would be difficult to say where he slept, in summer anywhere, in winter where he could find warmth. Like animals, better clad than he, yet like him, able to endure cold. He reveled in mere heat when he could come by it. Sometimes he stood at the back of a baker's oven, for he knew all the haunts of heat about the city. Sometimes he buried himself in the sids, husks of oats, lying ready to feed the kiln of a meal mill. Sometimes he lay by the furnace of the steam engine of the waterworks. One man employed there, when his time was at night, always made a bed for Gibbie. He had lost his own only child, and this one of nobody's was a comfort to him. Wow. Even those who looked upon wandering as wicked only scolded into the sweet upturned face, pouring gall into a cup of wine too full to receive a drop of it, and did not hand him over to the police. Useless verily that would have been, for the police would as soon have thought of taking up a town sparrow as Gibbie, and would only have laughed at the idea. They knew Gibbie's merits better than any of those good people imagined his faults. It requires either wisdom or large experience to know that a child is not necessarily wicked, even if born and brought up in a far viler entourage than was Gibbie. The merits the police recognized in him were mainly two. Let's see, I have neither of small consequence to them. Get my sweatshirt. My water too. Whoops. Okay. I wish I had listened to my instructions beforehand. I'm not going to cut this video up. Anyway. Oh, Leia. Here. All right. The merits the police recognized in him were mainly two, neither of small consequence in their eyes. The first, the negative, yet more important one, that of utter harmlessness. The second, and positive one, a passion and power for rendering help, taking notable shape chiefly in two ways, upon both of which I have already more than touched. The first was this peculiar faculty, now pretty generally known, his great gifts, some his great luck. Some called it great luck. Oh. All right. Others called it for finding things lost. It was no wonder the town crier had sought his acquaintance, and when secured, had cultivated it, neither a difficult task, for the boy, ever since he could remember, had been in the habit, as often as he saw the crier, or heard his tuck of drum in the distance, of joining him and following until he had acquainted himself with all the particulars concerning everything proclaimed as missing. The moment he had mastered the facts, announced he would dart away to search, and not unfrequently to return with the thing sought. Here, Leia. Sorry, girl. I forgot your thing fell down. 1 second. Your dog. There you go. Got a little more room. You want up on my lap? Are you getting cold? Okay. Oh, okay. I got you. All right. Sorry about the interruption. put on there? Okay. I got her. You want down? All right, hold on. There. Whoops. Got it? All right. Okay. Sorry, it's like when the kids come in or something, right? Okay. I'll do this so you can see to fast forward to that. Sometimes I do that. I think I forgot to do that at the beginning, but anyway. So he would be off at once to go look for the thing. The moment he had mastered the facts announced, he would dart away to search, and not unfrequently returned with the thing sought. But it was not by any means only things sought that he found. He continued to come upon things of which he had no simulacrum in his fantasy. These, having no longer a father to carry them to, he, now their owners unknown, took to the crier, who always pretended to receive them with a suspicion, which Gibbie understood as little as the other really felt, and at once advertised them by drum and cry. What became of them after that, Gibbie never knew. If they did not find their owners, neither did they find their way back to Gibbie. If their owners were found, the crier never communicated with him on the subject, right? So he could be rewarded. Plainly, he regarded Gibbie as the favored jackal whose privilege it was to hunt for the crier, the royal lion of the city forest. But he spoke kindly to him as well as he might, and now and then gave him a penny. Wow. The second of the positive merits by which Gibbie found acceptance in the eyes of the police was as yet a more peculiar one. Growing out of his love for his father and his experience in the exercise of that love, it was, however, unintelligible to them, and so remained, except on the theory commonly adopted with regard to Gibbie, namely, that he was one of theirs, right? Or that he wasn't all there. So it's in the Scottish. It wasn't all there. You know, they thought something was missing. Not the less was it to them a satisfactory whim of his, seeing it mitigated their trouble as guardians of the nightly peace and safety. It was indeed the main cause of his being, like themselves, so much in the street. At night, seldom did Gibbie seek his lair, I cannot call it a couch, before the lengthening hours of the morning. If the finding of things was a gift, this other peculiarity was a passion, and a right human passion, absolutely possessing the child. It was to play the guardian angel to drunk folk. Wow. Oh, I thought I had put airplane mode on. Hold on, hopefully that didn't interrupt us. All right. So it was, however, so he had this passion, sorry about that, to be this guardian angel for drunk folk. Anyway, if such a distressed human craft hove in sight, he would instantly bear down upon and hover about him until resolved as to his real condition. If he was in such distress as to require assistance, he never left him till he saw him safe within his own door. The police asserted that Sir Gibbie not only knew every drunkard in the city and where he lived, but where he generally got drunk as well. That one was in no danger of taking the wrong turning upon whom Gibbie was in attendance, to determine by a shove on the one side or the other, right, the direction in which the hesitating, uncertain mass of stultified humanity was to go. He seemed a visible embodiment of that special providence which is said to watch over drunk people and children. Only here a child was the guardian of the drunkard, and in this branch of his mission was well known to all who, without qualifying themselves for coming under his charitable cognizance, were in the habit of now and then returning home late. He was least known to those whom he rendered most assistance. Rarely had he thanks for it, never halfpence, but not unfrequently blows and abuse. For the last he cared nothing. The former, owing to his great agility, seldom visited him with any directness. A certain reporter of humorous scandal, after his third tumbler, would occasionally give a graphic description of what, coming from a supper party he once saw about 2 o'clock in the morning, in the great street of the city, he overhauled a huge galleon, which proved, he declared, to be the provost himself, not exactly waterlogged, and yet not very buoyant, but carrying a good deal of sail. That's just the way to say he was drunk. He might possibly have escaped very particular notice, he said, but for the assiduous attendance upon him of an absurd little cockboat in the person of wee Gibbie. A boat, I think one that goes back and forth, right? The two reminding him right ludicrously of the story of the Spanish Armada. Round and round the bulky provost gyrated the tiny baronet, like a little hero of the ring, pitching into him only with open-handed pushes, right? Not with blows, not on this side, now on this side, now on that. Not after such a fashion of sustentation as might have sufficed with a man of ordinary size, but throwing all his force now against the provost's bulging bows, now against his overleaning quarter, encountering him now as he lurched, now as he heeled, until at length he landed him high, though certainly not dry, on the top of his own steps. The moment the butler opened the door, and the heavy hulk rolled into the dock, like a boat, right? Gibbie darted off as if he had been the wicked one tormenting the righteous and in danger of being caught by a pair of holy tongs. Whether the tale was true or not, I do not know. With the after-dinner humorists, there is a reason for caution. Gibbie was not offered the post of henchman to the provost, and rarely could have had the chance of claiming salvage for so distinguished a vessel, seeing he generally cruised in waters where such craft seldom sailed, though almost nothing could now have induced him to go down Jink Lane. Yet about the time the company at Mistress Croale's would be breaking up, he would on most nights be lying in wait a short distance down the woody hill, ready to minister to that one of his father's old comrades who might prove most in need of his assistance. And if he showed him no gratitude, Gibbie had not been trained in a school where he was taught to expect or even a wish for any. The school of life never taught him to look for people to appreciate him, right? I could now give a whole chapter to the setting forth of the pleasures the summer brought him, city summer as it was, but I must content myself with saying that the first of these had not, and not least, was the mere absence of the cold of the other seasons, bringing with it many privileges. He could lie down anywhere and sleep when he would, or spend, if he pleased, whole nights awake in a churchyard, or on the deck of some vessel discharging her cargo at the quay, or running about the still sleeping streets. Thus he got to know the shapes of some of the constellations, and not a few of the aspects of the heavens. But even then he never felt alone, for he gazed at the vast from which the midst of a city full of his fellows. Then there was the sense of the laylocks, and the roses, and the carnations, and the sweet peas that came floating out from the gardens, contending sometimes with those of the grocers and chemist shops. Now and then, too, he came in for a small feed of strawberries, which were very plentiful in their season, sitting them on a hospitable doorstep, with the feet and faces of friends passing him in both directions, and love embodied in the warmth of summer all about him. He would eat his strawberries and inherit the earth. Right? Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. That's exactly him. I wonder if we ought to continue. Oh, this chapter. Okay, so I might be skipping some of this. I want this to be unabridged, but I don't know. There's some, anyway, chapter 8. But I have the link for the PDF, so you can read it if I do. It's called Sambo. Anyway, this was written in the 1800s, so it's just not to offend anybody. No one was so sorry for the death of Sir George, or had so many kind words to say in memory of him as Mistress Croll. Neither was her sorrow only because she had lost so good a customer, or even because she had liked the man. I believe it was much enhanced by a vague doubt that, after all, she was to blame for his death. In vain she had said to herself, and said truly, that it would have been far worse for him, and Gibbie too, had he gone elsewhere for his drink. If he didn't stop drinking and went elsewhere, they were worse. She had rules and stuff. She could not get the account settled with her conscience. She tried to relieve herself by being kinder than before to the boy, but she was greatly hindered in this by the fact that after his father's death, she could not get him inside her door. That his father was not there, would not be there at night, made the place dreadful to him. This addition to the trouble of mind she already had on account of the nature of her business was the cause, I believe, why, after Sir George's death, she went down the hill with accelerated speed. She sipped more frequently from her own bottle, soon came to tasting with the customers, and after that her descent was rapid. She no longer refused drink to women, though for a time she always gave it under protest. She winked at card-playing. She grew generally more lax in her administration, and by degrees a mist of evil fame began to gather about her house. Thereupon her enemy, as she considered him, the Reverend Clement Sclater, felt himself justified in moving more energetically for the withdrawal of her license, which, with the support of outraged neighbors, he found no difficulty in effecting. She therefore flitted to another parish and opened a worse house in a worse region of the city on the river bank, namely, some little distance above the quay, not too far to be within easy loading of discharging cargo. It pretended to be only a lodge house and had no license for the sale of strong drink, but nevertheless, one way and another, a great deal was drunk in the house, and, as always, card-playing and sometimes worse things were going on, getting more vigorous ever as the daylight waned. Frequent quarrels and occasional bloodshed was the consequence. For some time, however, nothing was very seriously brought the place immediately within the conscious knowledge of the magistrates. In the second winter after his father's death, Gibbie, wandering everywhere about the city, encountered Lady Lucky Croll in the neighborhood of her new abode. Down there she was mistress no longer, but with a familiarity scarcely removed from contempt, was both mentioned and addressed as Lucky Croll. The repugnance which had hitherto kept Gibbie from her having been altogether to her place and not to her herself, he at once accompanied her home, and after that went often to the house. He was considerably surprised when first he heard words from her mouth for using which she had formerly been in the habit of severely reproving her guests, but he always took things as he found them, and when ere long he had to hear such occasionally addressed to himself, when she happened to be more out of temper than usual, he never therefore questioned her friendship. What more than anything else attracted him to her house, however, was the jolly manners and open-hearted kindness of most of the sailors who frequented it, with almost all of whom he was a favorite, and it soon came about that when his ministrations to the incapable were over, he would spend the rest of the night more frequently than anywhere else, until at last he gave up, in a great measure, his guardianship of the drunk in the streets for that of those who were certainly in much more danger of mishap at Lucky Croll's. Scarcely a night passed when he was not present at one or more of the quarrels of which the place was a hotbed, and as he never by any chance took a part, or favored one side more than another, but confined himself to an impartial distribution of such peacemaking blandishments as the ever-springing fountain of his affection took instinctive shape in, the wee baronet came to be regarded by the better sort of the rough fellows almost as the very identical sweet cherub sitting perched up aloft, whose department in the saving business of the universe it was to take care of the life of poor Jack. What's that? The sailors, the cherub on sailing ships or something? I do not say that he always was successful in his endeavors at atonement, but beyond, is there a saint called Jack? Beyond a doubt, Lucky Croll's hoof was a good deal less of a hell through the haunting presence of the child. He was not shocked by the things he saw, even when he liked them least. He regarded the doing of them much as he had looked upon his father's drunkenness, as a pitiful necessity that overtook men, one from which there was no escape, and which caused a great need for Gibbies, in this world. Evil language and coarse behavior alike passed over him without leaving the smallest stain upon heart or conscience, desire or will. No one could doubt it who considered the clarity of his face and eyes, in which the occasional but not frequent expression of keenness and promptitude scarcely even ruffled the prevailing look of uncloudy, heavenly babyhood. If anyone thinks I am unfaithful to human fact and overcharge the description of this child, I, on my side, doubt the extent of the experience of that man or woman. I admit the child a rarity, but a rarity in the right direction, and therefore a being with whom humanity has the greater need to be made acquainted. I admit that the best things are the commonest, but the highest types and the best combinations of them are the rarest. There is more love in the world than anything else, for instance, but the best love and the individual in whom love is supreme are the rarest of all things. That for which humanity has the strongest claim upon its workman is a representation of its own best, but the loudest demand of the present day for the representation of that grade of humanity of which men see the most, that type of things which could never have been, but that it might pass. The demand marks the commonness, narrowness, low-leveled satisfaction of the age. It loves its own, not that which might be and ought to be its own, not its better self, infinitely higher than its present, for the sake of whose approach it exists. So he brings out the higher nature of us, and few can recognize it because they look for what's like them. I do not think that's why Jesus says they persecuted me, they'll persecute you, so don't be surprised. And anyway, God will teach you the right kind of detachment from it. Ask him. I do not think that the age is worse in this respect than those who have preceded it. Oh, good. I wanted to make sure Leia was still here. I mean, she's in her leash, but I'm going to wrap it up. I just go to this side of the page, so I want to. So I know where to start next time. But that vulgarity and a certain vile contentment, swelling to self-admiration, had become more vocal than hitherto, just as unbelief, which I think in reality less prevailing than in former ages, has become largely more articulate, and thereby more loud and peremptory. So it seems like there's more people that don't believe, but maybe they're just louder. But this was the 1800s. I pray it's the same now. But whatever the demand of the age, I insist that which ought to be presented to its beholding is the common good, uncommonly developed, and that not because of its rarity, but because of it is truer to humanity. Shall I admit those conditions, those facts, to be true exponents of humanity, which, except they be changed, purified, or abandoned, must soon cause that humanity to cease from its very name, must destroy its very being? To make the admission would be to assert that a house may be divided against itself and yet stand. It is the noble, not the failure from the noble, that is in the true human. And if I must show the failure, let it ever be with an eye to the final possible, yea, imperative success. But in our day, a man who will accept any oddity of idiosyncratic development in manners, tastes, or habits will refuse, not only as improbable, but as inconsistent with human nature, the representation of a man trying to be merely as noble as absolutely essential to his being, except indeed he be at the same time represented as failing utterly in the attempt, and compelled to fall back upon the imperfectness of humanity and acknowledge them as its laws. Its improbability judged by the experience of most men, I admit. Its unreality, in fact, I deny. And its absolute unity with the true idea of humanity, I believe and assert. Wow, hopefully you can understand what I just read. I'm going to read the next sentence. It's hardly necessary for me now to remark, seeing my narrative must already have suggested it, that what kept Gibbie pure and honest was the rarely developed, ever active love of his kind. He's just always loving, and without presumption. All right, much love.